Welcome to Living 4D with Paul Chek. Today's guest is Vanessa Lambert. For 30 years, Vanessa has leveraged holistic techniques for personal transformation, drawing on both modern and ancient healing methods. Vanessa's expertise spans soft energy, movement, breathwork, and healing arts like spiritual counseling, Kundalini yoga, Akashic reading, Reiki, and sound healing. She is the driving force behind Be the Wellness and Starseed Collective, organizations offering a blend of online and in-person events dedicated to fostering transformative change through holistic means. Her life mission? Aiding others in surpassing personal limits and finding their unique destiny through alignment with their soul path. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving us a 5-star rating and a warm review on the podcast platform of your choice. Your opinions matter, and your ratings help us to grow and help more people to be healthy, find freedom of body and mind, and to live their dreams. A big thank you to our sponsors, Bioptimizers, Paleo Valley, Organifi, and our newest sponsors, Ned and Wild Pastures. Their support is essential in producing this podcast, and we hope you will show your support by visiting them online and trying all the amazing products that they produce. The topic of Paul and Vanessa's conversation today is the Akashic Records.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Living 4D with Paul Chek. Today, we are going to speak about the Akashic Records with Vanessa Lambert. I was turned on to Vanessa Lambert by Jared Picard, and I looked into her, and it was just serendipitous timing that I had 2 or 3 students recommend I listen to podcasts with Vanessa Lambert. They all said, "Oh, you'll really like this lady. I think you should consider her for your podcast." So at first I was hesitant just because I get so many podcast offers and Jared throws them at me all the time. But then I thought, okay, well, if I've got people telling me I better look into it, I did. So I met with Vanessa, and it was obvious to me that she had the juice we need on the podcast. And since we've never talked about the Akashic Records yet, I thought, well, let's hear from the queen of the Akashic Records. So welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's so fun to be with you. And yeah, that I think that Virgo connection was just like instant, right? I was like, oh, I know you.
Yeah. That's why I said, when are you born? You seem your mental structure is very much like mine. And I was right.
I was definitely seeing like a fractal of my soul. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
No, it's so fun to be with you. You know, I've been in your aura for a long time, and we have lots of mutual friends. And yeah, it's just fun. It's fun to be here together.
Fantastic. Well, Vanessa, I know you're most known for your ability to read the Akashic Records, but since most people, and probably some of my audience, are not familiar with you, I'd love it if you can give us a biographical sketch of how you evolved to who you are today and what is important to you as a person.
Oh, gosh, it's always this little journey. You try to take people down in this succinct, fashion to get to the heartbeat of it all. But I think, ultimately for me, it all comes down to, I'm a teacher and a student. And I think that ultimately what I really love to help people do is to find that guru in them. And so, most of my life has been, when I look back at it, has been just a search for answers, a search to discover and uncover new aspects of myself, new aspects of reality, new aspects of, my understanding of this experience called life. And ultimately, at the end of it, it's like, okay, well, how can I actually take this information and help others find that for themselves? And I think that's the big thing I want people out there to understand about me and about what I offer is that, like, I'm not here to tell you anything that that should be true for you. I'm here to encourage you to find your own truth. And this guru in you thing is a big deal for me. Like, I want you to find the answers for yourself. I want you to find what's true for you and what's meaningful for you. And if I can be supportive and loving and a helpful guide along the way, then I'm here for that.
Yeah, I think that's important because, the risk is always being guruized by people or turned into a mommy or a daddy figure. And I found either of those is problematic. If you're a mommy and daddy figure, then they always want you to solve all their problems and keep running to you and don't take the responsibility of being responsible for themselves. And if they turn
Yeah.
you into a guru, they think you walk on water, and the day you fart, you're all of a sudden a bad guy,
100%. And I think especially, I teach Akashic Records, I teach Kundalini Yoga. I'm in a lot of these kind of, esoteric sects where it would be very easy to guruize, and it would be very easy to just, make me the place where you go for the answers. But like, that is not what I'm here for. I'm here to help reflect the light at you, to show you, anything that might be useful, anything that will be supportive, but for you to hold the light of your own life in your own hands and to really, be the master of your own destiny.
Yeah, I think that's critical. That's what Jung called individuation. So, if we don't become whole unto ourselves, then we are very susceptible to, daddy figures and false leaders and, the Donald Trumps and the apes that pound their chest in public and make lots of promises they never keep and play lots of tricks with people. But people that haven't become an adult and can't think for themselves unconsciously fall for that. But, that's where humanity's at. I think we're in a rite of passage ceremony right now.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of pressure on us. And I think that, even more so, the reason that I want to help people depressurize themselves and get to the truth. Because, in this polarity experience that is planet Earth, it's like we're pulled in so many directions, and there's so much pressure to conform in each of those directions. You're for this, you're against this, you love this, you hate this. It's like nobody's allowed to exist in neutrality anymore. And I think that's, the biggest thing for me is like, can we find a neutral space? Can we find a space where you can actually decipher for yourself what's true and not just be confronted and compounded by everybody else's truth and, co-opted and bullied and all of these things into all these different sects of, what other people want you to believe and what other people want you to carry. And I think that this is the biggest thing for me. And, it's so easy because there's so many things to rally around right now on planet Earth. I mean, you can rally around saving the planet. You can rally around the oceans. You can rally around so many things.
Yeah.
But like, you have a destiny to rally around something that is true and important to you. And if you just end up getting swept up into everybody else's platform or everybody else's, destiny line, you sometimes miss the boat to find your own destiny and to see what you're really here to create and do and make meaningful in your life. And so I think that to me is like, we've got to find some neutrality. We've got to find some space so that you can find what you are here to create with your life.
Yeah. A situation like we've been going through, particularly since the beginning of COVID, and we had a taste of it at 9/11 when the world was in shock, but and there, various other things. Princess Diana's death threw the world into a tizzy, and the wars in, the Gulf Wars and all that stuff. All those things can strongly affect the collective unconscious and the personal conscious and unconscious, because a lot of people just have a hard time looking at death and destruction. And, those of us that are even half awake know that most all of this stuff is all just organized crime. It has nothing to do with real war. It has everything to do with stealing from people. So it leaves a lot of pain that's hard for people to confront. And so, but this time since COVID started, it's so in your face that it's almost impossible to not, be blanketed by it, because it, these things separated families into polarities. One of the key things that Jung taught was the importance of holding the tension of the opposites, but it's not an easy thing to do, because you've got to sit, as the alchemists say, you got to sit and cook in your own fear, your own insecurities, and give it a time to play out in you, but be a witness to it instead of getting caught up in it. And I think a lot of people fall into their drama or into the world drama so deeply that they lose themselves in it. And next thing you know, they're eating junk food to medicate themselves, doing alcohol and drugs, and going to psychiatrists for anti-anxiety drugs. And by the time they finally, start breathing again, they're so lost and screwed up. It's like they've already gone to war within themselves and lost the battle. And I think it's just, I think the beauty of it all is there's never been a time where authentic spiritual development is more important, because I don't think there's anything else that can really help you find your center and have tools for navigating the kind of environment that we're in. But I think the beauty of it is so much of the evil of the world is now just coming right in your face, that it really makes it a very good opportunity to get clear on what your morality is and what your ethics are, and what's important to you and what you're willing to stand up for and protect. I think we got to the point where the world is just so swamped with video games, junk food, and mind-altering, numbing, hypnotizing TV that it's almost like the needle fell off the compass and everybody's just kind of going around in circles like drones, and it makes them so susceptible to all sorts of gimmicks and trickery. But what I'd love to hear a little bit about is how did your spirituality develop? How did your philosophy of life develop? What were the things that shaped you over the years to be in the position that you're in now?
It really starts with, the family I was born into. And I consider myself really lucky because I was born and raised in Northern California. And so there's obviously just that, there's that tapestry of counterculture, you could say. There's that tapestry of rebellion and people who are thinking outside of the box. There's also obviously a community and a culture around psychedelics and plant medicine, and just these things that I was sort of grown up and had an opportunity to, just I guess really to utilize and to shape my consciousness as a young person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for me, a lot of it was, just the beauty of growing up where I grew up. So I did psychedelics from a very young age. I don't necessarily recommend this or I'm not condoning it. People need to decide when is right for them, if ever, but I did my first psychedelic experience when I was about 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think from that moment, I just had a completely different look on reality. I had a completely different perspective on this whole earth experience. And, while most teenagers are falling into hating their parents and, deciding to rebel against everything, I think for me, I was like, oh, wow, it's not anything like what they told me. The war on drugs, right? This idea that these substances were terrible and, you should be terrified of them, they'll ruin your life. That flew in the face of my experience. My experience was that it actually made me feel more connected.
Yeah, totally.
More, and so I just felt like, okay, well, if that's not true, what else isn't true? And I'm 13 at this point.
Yeah.
Everything's on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from there, I just was really lucky. My mom took me to get certified for Reiki when I was 15 or 16. I just was growing up around medicine people and healers and people that were trying to, just create a different reality for them. And I remember going to my mom's friends' houses and they had labyrinths, just really beautiful things. I'm 44, so this is a while ago. This wasn't necessarily as common as it is now,
No.
but where I'm from in Northern California, we had a community where this was somewhat common. So I was really blessed to be, to grow up in this, to really just have this environment that nurtured these aspects of me from a very young age. And then when I was a young adult, I went to the Berkeley Psychic Institute
Oh,
and
cool.
did a year-long internship. I actually did it not at the institute, but I worked with teachers that were certified in that method for about a year. And that's when I learned how to use the Akashic Records and open the Akashic Records. So, it's destiny. That's really what it is. I feel like all along, God, the universe, myself, however you want to frame that, was leading me to this path and leading me to these modalities.
Well, they're all the same thing.
They're all the same thing. It's all God.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You sound like a Mount Shasta child. Where are you from?
So I'm from a little town called Kelseyville, which is just like over the hill from Mount St. Helena. So it's like
Oh,
Calistoga, Napa, Mendocino County, like the little
okay.
county in between. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, and my husband's from Mendocino County. So, we're just like little NorCal kids.
Yeah, it's funny because, I'm a native Californian. I was born in Los Angeles, but you don't really meet very many Californians in California. It's kind of
You
funny.
don't. You don't.
You can always tell when you do because they're like Vanessa.
They're a rare breed, and
Yeah.
we're living in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and it's very interesting for me to realize. I'm like, no, I am a real Californian. Like it's, I can't get around it. I can't hide it. Like it's there.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, it is interesting. I always love I love meeting real Californians. Angie's from Riverside, and she's got the same kind of healthy hippie shaman woman vibe that you do,
I
and
love it.
it's the strangest thing for me to be here and seeing California start to kind of turn into Chicago or something with all these people behaving like they have no sense of holism. Where are the Californians here?
And it's the antithesis of the true California spirit.
It
Like
is the opposite. I'm like,
it's the
what is
opposite.
this? The
Yeah.
Californians need to come home to protect this place.
I know. I literally have been talking to my husband about that. I'm like, I think we're going to need to spend some more time back in California because it's such a beautiful land and it's so powerful and the codes there are so strong and it's like there's this corruption happening of the true spirit, the true nature of the California frequency and even, their native lands. Like it's a very powerful energy field. And so I feel you. I feel you. I'm going to come home and, help out with the cause.
Yeah, well, interestingly, shaman that I worked with that was the most powerful woman I've ever known in my life. You should look this lady up if you've never heard of her, just to see her artwork. It's mind blowing.
Okay.
She passed away several years ago. I started working with her in 2006 or five. I can't remember. Her name is Rowena Kreider.
Rowena Kreider with a
Yeah,
C or a K?
Kryder.
Okay.
Sometimes she has her middle name in there, Rowena Petty, Pette Kreider.
Okay.
I think she was Dutch, but she lived in a tent on Mount Shasta for 7 years doing healing on the earth and
Mm.
dealing with the dark energy trapped in the earth because of the vortex energy there. I think it gave her easier access to the deeper energies of the core of the planet. But she was California writ large, but unbelievably powerful woman. I mean, I could talk for an hour straight just about all the wild stuff this woman could do. But
You
if you
know,
look
yeah,
into her
Mount
art
Shasta.
alone, it's powerful.
Yeah, I can feel it from here, actually. I can feel the energy. Yeah.
Yeah, she's strong.
And Mount Shasta, last time I was there, just as a total aside here, but I have to tell this story because it's just like so indicative of the power of Mount Shasta. I
Uh-huh.
was there for a plant medicine ceremony and the shaman took us up to this, kind of sacred portal on the mountain where just lots of magical things happen. And I was wandering around and he said, everybody just kind of wander around and see what happens, see what you're called to, draw in. And I was wandering around and I looked and there was this little rolled up piece of paper in the rock. And it's like, I mean, it's incredible that I noticed it because I mean, it was just like this tiny little sliver in between the rock and I pulled it out and I read it. And I swear to God, it was a letter from me to me. It
Wow.
was crazy. And I read it in the ceremony that night. And I was like, I found this today in the rock. It literally detailed out all the things I was working on, all my aspirations, what I was here, my mission. It was like literally a letter from me to me. And I'm like, only in Mount Shasta. I mean, it was just so wild.
That is interesting, really. Yeah. Well, that's fun.
Yeah. I mean, a real letter, like
As
written out.
as the old saying goes, God works in mysterious ways.
Very mysterious ways. Yeah. Yeah. When I read it to the group, they were just like, what? You didn't write this? Like, this isn't you? I'm like, no, but it is me. But it's, but I found it. It was, yeah, Mount Shasta is a very powerful place.
Yeah, I like it there. They got a lot of neat shops there, a lot of great crystal shops, and it's got the hardcore California vibe.
For sure. Yeah. Lots of sound healing, lots of just like, yeah, they're high on the frequency. They get it.
Yeah. I'd love it if you could describe what the Akashic Records are and what their
Mm.
significance is, particularly for those that are unfamiliar or maybe who have read a little bit about it but don't really understand it.
Yeah, I think, it's kind of this very multidimensional thing. It's a little bit difficult to wrap your head around, but I think the easiest way to describe it is just really the records of all things that have ever happened and ever will happen. And, that sounds kind of like, all right, let me titrate down and make that a little bit more usable. But if you think about your soul and everything that's happened to it, there's just this database where all of this information of your soul and everything that's happened is stored. And so, it's kind of like if you think about the family historian, right? I think of my Aunt Janie at every single family event. She's taking photos and she's like documenting everything that happened at the family event. And then she puts them in her little archive in her photo albums, and she kind of keeps track of everybody and everything that happened. The Akashic Records are like that. They're just keeping track of all of the things that have happened to you and that will happen to you. And it's kind of that simple. And how you work with them, how you use them, how you interface with them, that can be all kinds of crazy different, cornucopia of ways, but really it's just a record of everything.
Yeah. There's quite a number of different experts that have very varying opinions of the Akashic Record and the Akashic field.
Mhm.
The way I would describe it is if you think of God as unconditional love, which would be symbolized as a zero, if you look at a graph with a sine wave on it, the sine wave always has a positive and a negative cycle, but it begins and ends at zero. So the quantum foam that creates the phenomenon that ultimately becomes subatomic particles, atoms, and the universe, the stuff of the universe, is constantly emanating from and returning back to zero. So if you think of what we have as modern technology that we use for zip files, so you can take a large document and zip it, Source is capable of zipping the entire process of the universe down to zero. So when somebody actually has an intention to access the Akashic Records, they're interfacing with zero and their intention has a frequency. I want to know about Paul Chek or Vanessa or what's going to happen in 2024 or 2029. And that basically, because you're part of God, your soul and your higher self really is sitting right there on the zero line, you're accessing the zip file of God's own experience. That's
I
just
love
sort of the
that.
way I describe it.
I love that. Yeah, and it's almost like, it's so much information, right? Like it's infinite. We can't even understand how much information this is. So in a way you can think about it as, you're like you said, the zip file. You're accessing like this reference point. You're accessing this way that you can bring the information in, and it's not so massive that it overwhelms the system because it's been kind of condensed down well enough for you to actually bring it in and work with it. And so I love that idea of a zip file. It's perfect.
The quantum zip.
The quantum zip. Yeah, I love it.
If you want to know more about yourself, you got to pull down God's zipper.
Yeah. But the thing is, it's like in the end, and this is one of the reasons that I teach the Akashic Records, is that what it is for you and how you work with it can mean all kinds of different things. It can take on all different shapes and sizes and forms. And I think that's the really cool thing about having a relationship with the Akashic Records is that You get to decide what it is for you or how you're meant to interface with it. And it's so much information. It's such this vast, just this vast database that like you could work in the Akashic Records and only work with a certain sector, a certain kind of vibration or a certain kind of way that you work with it for lifetimes. And then maybe you change and you grow and you want to work with a different way of accessing the Akashic Records and working with it. And so I think that's the cool part about it is that yes, it's this massive thing, this macro concept, but also you can find a way to work in this micro way that's really beautiful and meaningful for you and isn't so large that you're like, okay, well, what's the point of even trying to access this thing? Because it's just beyond what I can comprehend.